What's up, STS Nation, and welcome to another episode of Surviving the Survivor, the podcast that promises to bring you the very best guests in true crime. It's not just a tagline, it is our reality. And once again, you will see it play out with this esteemed panel that I'm about to introduce. But first, we all know by now that Alec Murdaugh went from prominent South Carolina attorney to convicted killer. And in his wake, it seems like the entire Low Country was affected. The case of Mallory Beach's untimely death in a boating accident, it is headed to a civil trial come this summer, which is very soon. It comes also at the same time that authorities say the investigation into Stephen Smith's death, now ruled a murder, is heating up as well. Without further ado, best guests. He's been on the show before. Happy to have him back. Obviously, much better read than I am, as you can tell by his bookshelf. He is Hampton County native Michael M. DeWitt Jr., a multiple award-winning journalist and longtime editor of the 143-year-old The Hampton County Guardian. He is also the author of the brand new book, Wicked Hampton County. If you have not been on the Amazon, get on the Amazon and order Wicked Hampton County. His boots on the ground coverage of the Murdaugh crime saga was published in print and online around Gannett's nationwide USA Today network. He's been on all the shows to discuss it: ABC's 2020, CBS's 48 Hours, Dateline NBC. That is the holy trinity of true crime right there, as well as Netflix documentary shows to discuss the Alec Murdaugh case. Amy Lawrence Lovely. What can we say about her except we hope she does not drop too many F-bombs because it messes with my algorithm. Hopefully she stays, PG for this. She is an attorney's attorney fighting for the civil rights of the wrongfully accused every day in her practice at the lovely law firm named in part for her husband, who's her partner. Amy, as I like to say every time, she was on MTV's Teen Mom 2. I don't even know what that means. And she's appeared on the Dr. Phil show. Taylor Bell, he is focused on representing criminal defendants ever since his student days at the University of South Carolina School of Law, where he received his Juris Doctor degree in 2011. He worked at the Public Defender's Office for 6 years before moving to a private firm. And in 2015, he received intensive additional training in the art of jury persuasion. So be careful with Taylor Bell. A very quick side note. So I had an agent when I was in the news business for many, many years. I had not talked to him in like 3 or 4 years, but I had a question. We had to connect today. He is a South Carolinian. And what does he tell me? He was in the same fraternity as Alec Murdaugh at the exact same time. What a small world. So, and then he had to jump off the phone of all things. So he could be a good source for Michael DeWitt, and I'm going to follow that call back up and find out what that was like. You can follow us on Facebook, Insta, Twitter. We are at Podcast STS. You can also now, once again, listen to us anywhere you listen to podcasts. Support us at Patreon. Become a YouTube member. The merch store is open. Without further ado, Michael, welcome back to you. Wicked Hampton County sounds a little frightening. What is the premise of the book, Michael?
Well, thank you for having me back, and I'm nice to meet everyone. Good to be back. I'm glad you asked me about the title because a lot of people have gotten the misconception that I just created this title and I'm calling my hometown Wicked because of the Murdaugh crime saga and everything that's been associated with Hampton County. But it's actually part of a national series. The History Press and Arcadia Publishing, they have several a series of books, and Wicked is one of them. There's a Wicked Charleston, two Wicked Charleston volumes, Wicked Savannah, Wicked Beaufort, Wicked Greenville, and I haven't explored to see where you can find them, but I'm sure there are thousands of these titles in their brand. So when I started writing this book years ago, I finished it recently, and it just fell naturally into that Wicked series that the History Press publishes. So don't be fooled by, don't be afraid to come to Hampton County next week and see us during the Watermelon Festival. We're not all wicked,
And I mean, but what do you cover in the book, from first chapter to the final chapter? Is it historical?
It is a history book. Over the past year, I've written 2 history books. Wicked Hampton County is the first one, and it covers pretty much all of Hampton County's history since it was carved out of Beaufort County, and it kind of sets the stage for where the Murdaugh dynasty came from. There's a great deal of Murdaugh history in this book, going back to the Civil War. But it also includes things like our civil rights struggles, and we used to have the Klan used to be here in our area, and Hampton County was basically like the Wild West of the Low Country, or at least our community was much like the Wild West that you see on television, gunfights and things of that nature. Lots of moonshining. So it's kind of a prequel to Fall of the House of Murdaugh. Fall of the House of Murdaugh is all about the Murdaugh dynasty. Well, if we were Star Wars fans, Wicked Hampton County kind of sets the stage and the landscape of where the Murdaughs came from.
And did you find any, when you were researching the history of the Murdaughs, did you find any other corruption in the lineage?
I'm a journalist. I'm trying to tell both sides of the story. No character is all good. No character is all evil. So I hope in Fall of the House of Murdaugh, even more than in Wicked Hampton County, I hope you'll see that the Murdaugh dynasty was a very complicated dynasty. There was greatness there as far as great talent. There were great deeds they did for their communities, and there was also great corruption. So the first generation of Randolph Murdaughs, who held the solicitor's office, he was more or less clean cut, very ambitious. He built the dynasty. The alleged corruption begins to come in Alex Murdaugh's grandfather, Buster Murdaugh. He was accused of everything, and this is in both books, actually. He was accused of everything from tax evasion to stealing from clients. Of course, this big moonshine conspiracy, he went on trial in federal court in Charleston, and was acquitted. About 29 or 30 bootleggers and other officials went to federal prison, and he was the only one that of note that got away scot-free. So, he was also accused of stealing a woman's cows. I've left that part out, and you'll read all about that in Fall of the House of Murdaugh. So, if you can imagine allegations against a public official, he was accused of almost everything, but he always got away scot-free. The Murdaugh power and connections were awesome, and so that's where the taint begins to fall on the Murdaugh name.
And one final question, because I'm curious, how do you do all this research? I mean, does this require going to the county library and looking through archival records? How did you find all this stuff out?
Well, I've been fortunate. As editor of the newspaper, I've inherited the research from previous editors. I've inherited the archives. So I don't know if I mentioned this, but I started working on Wicked Hampton County years ago. As editor of the newspaper, I'm sitting around this dusty old office with all of these 100-year-old archives, and on rainy days, I just start digging. And I actually published my first history book in 2015, and it was all about the great things that are associated with Hampton County. And in the process of researching that book, I found all this wickedness and corruption. So as a rainy day project, I'd go through these archives, and what I couldn't find in our newspaper archives, I'd go to the local library or County Museum, and I just go to the courthouse and dig up old court records, and it's all right there if you put a little work and a little research into it, and you know how to bring a story to life. It's all right there.
And that, my friends, is called a real journalist. Once again, unlike myself, unlike most broadcast journalists, print guys, they dig in dusty offices. They get to wear hats. Those cool hats behind you, by the way, Michael, hanging.
Thank you.
And that's how you get real information from guys like Michael DeWitt. By the way, I'm sure that Taylor Bell, significantly younger than me, has heard of T-Pain. I thought this person's name was I'm Not in Pain. I have never heard of the rapper T-Pain. Still could not name a single song, but this is I Am Not T-Pain the rapper. Taylor, I wanted to clarify that for you in case. Have you heard of T-Pain, Taylor? Is that like asking if...
Absolutely. My college days. Absolutely heard of T-Pain, hanging out in Miss Amy Lovely's place of Murdaugh Beach up there at Club Kryptonite.
And it all catches up with you. Suddenly, I'm the old guy with the white in my beard. It's not fun. Amy Lawrence Lovely, perhaps the most important question I will ask all evening. I'm a Jersey guy, and I said low country. Is that remotely, like, do you have to say low country in a certain way to be accepted by South Carolinians? Someone once told me it's one word, like low country.
I just want to say this. I could hear Michael. I could just listen to Michael talk all day long. I love your accent. I will never have that accent. And it makes me so sad. I'm from North Carolina, so I'm a South Carolina transplant. I've been here for 16 years, but I'm always so jealous of that accent. You know, it's like when I hear a low country attorney get up and I say, Yana, may I please the court? And I just like, oh, I melt. I love it. I love every bit of it.
I don't want you guys to get offended, but I had no idea you had different accents. But go on, Amy.
Oh, yeah. Myrtle Beach is all transplants. There's very few people that are actually from here. So you've got a mixture of like Yankee, Ohio, Pennsylvania, all this stuff. But like when you get from Charleston and down, you get that low country accent, and I could just listen to it all day long.
Wow. By the way, T-Pain's the question was, how close are we to seeing justice for Steve? And we're going to get there tonight, slowly but surely. Laura Waldy here. What's up, Joel? Best guest in SCS Nation. I sure hope Mallory Beach and Stephen Smith get justice. Their families have been waiting a long time. So let's start to get into it. A judge, Amy Lawrence Lovely, just came out and told Alec Murdaugh to buzz off after he asked the court to consider his motion to be able to pay his legal fees from money in his 401k. And the judge, as I said, told him no way. Is that any surprise to you?
No, absolutely no surprise. I mean, we know that Jim and Dick were paid like what, $600,000 for that. They should have got Amy Z. I think she could have won it. I'm joking. He already got paid $600,000. There are so many victims. I mean, they're all lined up. And the idea that we would give this man a nickel more than what he already got out of his estate is just, I think it's just unconscionable, knowing all the people that he ripped off and hurt and everything, after. It's just, I was not surprised at all. Taylor, were you surprised at all?
Correct me if I'm wrong. The 401k was busted into initially to pay for the initial trial.
Correct. And I'm glad you brought that up, Taylor.
They were able to bust in to pay for the initial trial at the trial level, and they now sought to get into those funds to pay for appellate purposes.
Right. Correct.
And there is my understanding. So I'm not surprised. I think the order previously was these funds would be set aside for the trial purpose. And the purpose of that kind of was that the other remaining portions would go towards the victims towards restitution of the victims in the other cases. And I think that's kind of what the judge, hey, you already had your chance at using some of these funds for that. And the agreement was, now y'all are coming back, trying to take more money from the victims. They allowed them to do it the first time because the victims would have never been able to touch that money to start with. But because they were agreeing to it, that's how it was used at the trial level. So I'm not surprised at all, because the initial agreement was what it was.
And just to clarify exactly what Taylor was just saying, so his legal team, good old Poot and Jim Griffin, said that they spent over $600,000 that they were able to access from his retirement account for the double murder trial. Taylor, just offhanded here, $600,000. I know that's what you get paid per trial, but does this seem like an exorbitant amount for this trial that you witnessed in real time for 6 weeks, or does that seem like a fair number?
Years ago, I was appointed to a murder trial in Lexington County, South Carolina, after the individual had gone through numerous lawyers. I got appointed by the court, and there was a cap of, I believe, $3,500 that I tried a 2-week murder trial for. Let's just say that they got more than enough to pay for that trial. Again, could have been serviced better by Amy Z, I believe. I think she's already had a not guilty recently.
Right.
Since then,
could have had Taylor Bell. Could have had Sean Kent.
Not me.
Not a murder lawyer.
Not but at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, I've never quoted somebody $600,000 for a murder trial.
No, but I'm going to start.
I'm going to start now. I'm going to start.
Megan, look here. Taylor, look at Megan Baldwin. Aw, Taylor Bell, love, exclamation. If that's not your wife, you better be careful. But Michael DeWitt, to you. So exactly, once again, to Taylor's point, Alec Murdaugh now reportedly needs an additional $160,000 for his appeal. And the judge had already denied this motion from Alec Murdaugh once. Now it appears that he has done it at least a second time. But to you, from humble Hampton County, what about these figures? I mean, this would be $760,000. What is that money for? Do you have any idea, Michael?
Yeah, Taylor's absolutely right. There was roughly $1.2 million in his 401k, and the receivership that was established by the court to seize his assets and start building a fund for these victims, it couldn't touch the 401k until it was liquefied. Once it was liquidated, then the courts could seize it. So they worked out a deal where Alex's attorneys got $600,000 and the victims got a little over $400,000, and that was to go to pay for the trial. And their claim was the trial went longer than expected. 6-week trial. They used their own money, is what they claimed in legal filings. They used their own money to pay for making copies or whatever. But then again, they stayed in a grand estate while they were there. They didn't stay at the Comfort Inn while they were in Waldorf for 6 weeks.
What, like $25,000 a week?
Yeah, I didn't dig deep into that story, but it was something like they rented out a whole gated community almost, and
a wedding venue.
Yeah, and so it was like $25,000 a week or something like that. And so long story short, the judge granted the first request, $600,000. Here you go, $424,000 to the victims. And now they're coming back and saying, okay, we need $160,000 to pay for Alex's appeal, or he'll be forced to rely on a public defender, and they're already overworked and understaffed and all this kind of stuff. And the judge, he didn't even go into detail when he denied it. There was a constitutional argument to be made when they first filed a request saying, hey, he's entitled to use these funds for his own defense. You can't deny him a constitutional right to defense. But their claim was also that these funds were untainted, that he didn't steal them, he earned them honestly, which can be debated. When the judge denied it most recently, he didn't even really give a reason. And I think the reason is, okay, you've already come to the table, you've already made an agreement, and you should have asked for more the first time around. So now we're going to stick to this agreement. That's the way I understand it.
I tend to agree 100%. Now, if I want to butt in there a little bit on something that I've noticed some people saying, well, he should just have to go with a public defender. Look, at the end of the day, I'm going to tell you some of the attorneys in our Office of Indigent Defense are going to do a better job in an appellate process than any private attorney out there. So the idea that people are saying he should have to go with these overburdened folks, we've got some pretty darn good lawyers that are there in the Office of Indigent Defense that'll put up a pretty good defense in terms of his appellate rights. So, I kind of take issue, having been a public defender before, at the way that they're being condescending towards our Office of Indigent Defense. There's things wrong with it. Don't get me wrong. But when he's just got to go with a public defender.
What's Bob's last name? It just escaped me.
Duddick?
That's the smartest mofo I have ever spoken to in my life. Like, he wishes
smartest people in there.
He could get. I mean, you would, if you had to have an appeal, that's who you would want.
If I want somebody arguing in front of the Supreme Court, I want one of them. They're in front of the Supreme Court every single week. Every single week.
Watching that, they didn't. This is the deal. I think it's very hard to be objective at critiquing your own transcript. I think that's really a hard thing 100%. To do. 100%. And I didn't see them dazzle anyone, and I didn't see them preserve 99% of the objections, right? They didn't preserve them for the record, which means that they don't even come into play. So I don't know. I wouldn't want them as my appellate attorneys, to be quite honest with you.
Neither would I, as well as PCR. But I have the underlying question also is, we've already had the Supreme Court make findings of fact based on factual information that came into this trial prior to the trial based on Alex's law license. I question how much. I question how much of an opportunity he's really going to have before an appellate court that's already made a factual finding based on his admissions in the I think it was a judgment that he issued prior to the trial in order to try to get a lower bond in front of Judge Lee in that matter. But they've already made a factual finding based on admissions there, and then they're going to be the ones sitting in review. I don't know. It's going to be messy. It's going to be a messy appellate record, in my opinion.
Allison Miller here. Look at this. Yay, Michael DeWitt. I love Wicked, Hampton County. People go out and buy that book on the Amazon. As I said, Catherine joining us from Hawaii. Aloha. Joel, STS Nation, and best guests. Patricia Ann Ryan. Hi from Virginia. And I love this one. Ooh, Amy with the mouth is here. Yes, she is. And followed by, yay, Amy's here. Love that spicy language. I asked her to tone it down.
I said mofo, okay?
I love how they call her language spicy and me just rude.
Yeah, exactly. Marina is in the south of Spain, a friend of the show. She is here in full force. Now, Amy, I know I've asked you this, but I don't think I've asked Michael or Taylor. Now that we've had time to process this verdict, 3-letter word is still unanswered. As Amy Lawrence Lovely would say in her accent, why? Michael DeWitt, have you given any more thought as to why this all happened? Was it money, greed? Was he ashamed of his son? Was he covering something up? What do you think the motive behind these murders was?
I was doubtful at first with the whole motive that the state put forward, and I sat there almost every day of that trial, and I listened and I watched and I could read people. I think they had it spot on. I think they didn't go deeply into drugs as a motive, but I think the drug addiction, which Alex exaggerated, nobody's taking that many pills and walking around. But a liar is going to lie. I think alcohol has made me do some crazy things and make some bad decisions. So I can imagine pills. You're already in an altered state, so you're not going to make the best decisions possible, whether you're high or whether you're in withdrawals. But I think the motive was spot on. Look at the facts. He's a personal injury lawyer. Mark Tinsley said it on the stand. Nice people get verdicts. If he's portrayed to the world as the victim of a vigilante, no jury anywhere in the Low Country is going to say, okay, Alex Murdaugh, you have to cough up $10 million in this boat crash case. I think there are a lot of factors in play. I think Alex was, I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know if he's a sociopath or a psychopath, but I think, as John Metter said in his closing argument, Alex loved Paul and Maggie, but he loved Alex more. So he was willing to do some things to his own family to create this distraction. Just think about all the things that happened in the short term after their deaths. Automatically, everyone stopped asking questions. Oh my God, Alex, are you okay? Let's circle the wagons. Let's protect Alex. Find out who are they coming for next. And so he got sympathy. He got a distraction. They stopped asking questions. And as Mark Tinsley said on the stand, if that would have maintained itself as a status quo, then the boat crash case is going away. He's going to drop it. They're going to dismiss it or drop it. And once the boat crash case goes away, nobody's asking questions. Nobody's digging into his finances. For 13 years, he's been stealing money, and all that remains hidden if that boat crash case goes away. So, unfortunately, the ladies at the law firm, his own paralegal, the CFO, they kept digging, and they found these checks laying around on his desk, and they found more information, and they confronted him in September. And once again, as Creighton Waters said, when the hounds are at the door, when Hannibal's at the gates, Alex Murdaugh chooses violence. So once again, he was confronted, and he faked or attempted his violence on the side of the road in September. That's when the whole thing went to hell in a handbasket, to use the spicy language that Miss Lovely enjoys. If things would have remained on the down low, I think the boat crash would have went away. None of this would have happened, or it would have been a long time before it was discovered. I think that September incident made the world and made investigators and everyone else realize that he was not a victim of a vigilante, that there was something more to Alex Murdaugh, and that's when his downfall truly began.
And Taylor, how about you? Have you given more thought? Do you agree with what Michael's saying? Anything else about motive here?
I'm going to agree with the idea that the years of drug use, the years of alcohol use, I think, you saw it through his youngest son, the alcohol use. I think he used alcohol. I think he used drugs. Now, I'm not saying to the extent that was portrayed, but anyone that takes opioids for a long period of time is going to cloud their mind. It's going to cloud they're not going to think straight, and it's not going to be rational thoughts at what they do. And I think a lot of that stood out to me when Judge Newman made the comment at the end, that maybe it wasn't you, not the person that's standing before me being the sober person, but the person that lived in this altered reality due to drug use. And I think drug addicts, anyone that's an addict, tries to manipulate the situation. And that's what Alex was doing, was trying to manipulate the situation, cover up things. And ultimately, I think something went wrong down at the kennels. I think there was an intent to kill somebody. I don't know if it was both, but I think something went wrong. And it was an intent to kill one. I don't know which one, but there was an intent to kill somebody there. Whether one was there and one wasn't supposed to be there, I'm unsure in my thoughts, but he then had to continue to cover up. And that's what it all led to, his clouded mind and irrational thought process, thinking he could get away with it. But a lot of what Michael's saying, I 100% agree with that.
Well put. Shelley Hill, for you, Michael, how does Michael DeWitt Jr. feel about becoming such a public figure? I've seen him in so many things. I feel related to him. He is great. So your sister Shelley is asking, how's it feel, Michael?
I wouldn't consider myself a public figure. I'm trying to continue to be a professional journalist and cover the story. I turned down, I may have mentioned this before, I turned down a lot of interviews for the first year after the boat crash, or year and a half. I turned down, the national media and television. I did my job. I wrote my stories. I reported on the story, but I didn't want to get in front of a camera for a lot of reasons. And it just, folks in my company and folks in my community kind of talked me into it. And they said, hey, these people from New York and California and all around the world are coming here and they're telling our story, and they're not getting it right. Nobody knows our story like we do. And so I agreed to do the first TV interview. I think it was CBS 48 Hours, and they were super nice people. It was a good experience. If that would have been a horrible experience, if they'd have been a bunch of rude Yankees, I probably wouldn't have done any more. But they were just as sweet as they could be, and it was a good experience. I didn't say anything stupid and in front of the TV, and they didn't make me look too bad. And so when the next interview came along, I said, okay, I'll do it. Just don't make me look too bad. Cut out the stupid parts. And then once you do one, they just kind of keep coming. And I have tried to say no to some of them, and they say, come on, man. So I talk to them. But I haven't, I don't ask for any compensation, never been offered any compensation. I won't even let them pay for my gas, or the TV crews have offered to put me up in a hotel room. And so I'll be comfortable, and I don't accept any of that kind of stuff. I'm just there to do a job as a journalist. And, I'm sure that eventually all this will go away, and I still have to get back to life as normal here in Hampton County. And, I may not have as many friends as I did, but as editor of a small town paper, you don't have a whole lot of friends to start with. So I'm not really worried about that.
So he's a print journalist, an ethical one at that. And by the way, I texted him last night and I said, come on, Michael, come on my show. And he finally gave in and decided to come on the show. By the way, Amy Lawrence, you're right. He has a way better accent than you. It's a wonderful book, Allison writes. He does a great job telling the history with stories and includes old articles, not 5 stars, but 10 out of 10. I wish I would get 10 out of 10 stars for this podcast. Buzz Off Brad gave me 1, which I'm still holding a grudge against, but what can you do? Moving on here to Stephen Smith. Fitz News, I want to give him a shout out because they've been breaking a lot of news regarding this, but there is a active, according to them, statewide grand jury going on in Columbia, South Carolina, actively investigating the 2015 homicide of Stephen Smith. This is according to multiple sources. Amy Lawrence Lovely, what goes on? We heard about this grand jury indictment. I don't want to get politics involved at all. That was related to Trump, and you hear about this all the time. But what's going on right now in Columbia, South Carolina, with this grand jury? What sorts of things are they looking at and doing?
Wouldn't we all like to know? Because it's
sure
secret. Grand juries are very secret. They're not for public record. There's no transcripts, and they keep it that way. But what we do know is that the prosecutors are bringing in witnesses. The grand jury is hearing testimony from those witnesses. They're evaluating evidence, and then at the end of that presentation of testimony and witnesses, they'll decide whether or not they're going to indict, right, and bring charges.
We actually do have transcripts in state grand jury cases. At county grand juries, we don't, but we do at state grand jury cases. And yeah, you can go 5 blocks from my office. They won't to get one printed. Holy cow! They want an arm and a leg. To the cost of them, and you can go there and you can review them. But we'll have transcripts from the state grand jury.
Will we have them after?
The attorneys will have them, and that's how you're going to review your discovery. I've worked several of the prison cases involving. We had one called Operation Cash Cow that I've worked. There's transcripts from those. I worked Operation Hot Toddies, which was a human trafficking one. That you're going to be able to see what these witnesses had to say. So we'll find out a lot more. We won't have access to it probably until after the trial, I can imagine. I think only attorneys will be able to have access to it in the discovery. And the Attorney General's office has you sign a confidentiality on discovery, unlike the county cases. You don't have to sign a non-disclosure, not going to turn over the evidence to your client type stuff that you do in federal court. State grand jury works very, very similar to that. I'm interested. I think you're going to have a lot of folks in law enforcement subpoenaed and asked hard questions as to the manner in which this case, the Stephen Smith case, transferred from agency to agency and why the investigation didn't move forward. I think there's going to be a lot of questions about that because
people want to know, right?
It's my understanding that it was all now hit and run is a homicide. Like we have murder, right? But it was initially investigated as a hit and run. Is kind of my understanding. Is what I do know and what I've heard about it and what I've read. We do have hit and run with death, right? And the Highway Patrol does investigate stuff of that nature. Now, if there was some kind of foul play, maybe another agency needed to get involved and they were shunned away is kind of what I've heard. And it stayed with Highway Patrol. Michael, you may be able to correct me if I'm wrong because you probably have more details, but I'm thinking that we're going to get a lot of individuals that were in charge down in that troop or that region with that Highway Patrol in there as to what was done and whether there was any outside influence potentially on the process. And that's my thoughts on what's going to happen here. And there could be some public corruption maybe involved in the manner in which it was investigated potentially. If they did things to curry favor to people and it gets found out about, maybe that's something they're looking into. I've wondered.
It could be as complicated. It could be as like salacious as the Murdaughs were. I don't think the Murdaughs were involved, but the Murdaughs were involved. And we know that Randy Murdaugh offered to do the insurance, right? The personal injury part of it, pro bono. We've heard evidence and testimony, and we've heard all this stuff about how they would get cops to change accident reports. So it might be as salacious as all this other stuff, but it also might be as simple as he was a gay kid who got hit and nobody really cared, which we see all the time. And so we got to be open to all of it.
Yeah, let's hope that's not the case. Michael,
there's so much we don't know, and it's one of those things that I'm sorry there, Joel, but it's one of those things that is sad that there weren't more resources put into it at the time to get answers for this kid that got killed. Whether it was accidental, not really. It can't be accident if you don't stop, but that's going to be a crime itself. But in terms of one way or the other, whether there was an intentional motive behind, some kind of bias towards, his sexuality, whether it was accidental based, but not stopped, I don't know. But there should have been more resources from the beginning put into it.
I can tell you this:
to get answers.
If Buster Murdaugh had gotten hit and killed, they'd have pulled out all the stops. I do know that. You're
100% correct. 100% correct. And that's a big problem that we do have. Again, I say that the resources that the government put into prosecuting Alec, I would love to see those same resources be put into lower level cases where my clients were absolutely 100% innocent and should have never been put to trial. But because of really poor, shitty investigations, they pointed their finger at the first person possible instead of taking an entire, investigative look at actually what happened. Like if this was done at a different level and they didn't really look into it, didn't pull actually all the data from the phone, they didn't pull everything, which they don't necessarily do in lower level, non-high profile stuff. And my clients as a public defender were shafted and set in jail for 2 years awaiting trial that eventually they have to plead to some lesser charge just to get out of jail. I wish that type of resources were put into other cases. Well,
reading between the tea leaves, it definitely does not sound like they're investigating something that was unintentional. And speaking of that, per Fitz News, I'm sure Michael is reporting some of this too. They are saying that it is increasingly likely that arrest warrants are going to be issued in connection with this 8-year-old case, which gained international attention, of course, after the Murdaugh crimes and specifically the Murdaugh murders podcast. When that came out, I guess that elevated the profile. To you, though, Michael, has any of your reporting? Let me leave it more open-ended. What are you hearing in terms of this grand jury that's being convened in Columbia, South Carolina?
Let me circle back to what we were just talking about. I think you guys are spot on in a lot of ways. I think that small community like Hampton doesn't have the best resources anyway. And, the Highway Patrol probably didn't put their best resources in little old Hampton County, and whether because of who the young man was or not, that may have been a factor. I think that other agencies should have been brought on board. I don't know that, I think Highway Patrol is a great agency. Nothing against them, but I don't think they're designed for complex criminal investigations. They're designed for accident reconstruction investigations, and things like digging into cell phones and digging into anything that's not a roadside accident is not their forte. So someone should have said, hey, we need SLED involved in this right now. It was a hot mess from the start. The Hampton County coroner first ruled it a gunshot wound. Said, "Hey, I see 2 holes in his head. It was a gunshot wound." So it was a hot mess from the start. There were at least one trooper that really tried to get out there and dig and interview people.
God bless him. I just want to say,
Yeah.
God bless him, because but for him going out, doing his investigation, recording everything that he did, documenting everything, we'd be sitting here 20 years from now still wondering what happened to Stephen Smith.
But
So God bless him, because he begged for help. He begged for it to be escalated. He begged for people, for SLED to take it over, and it all fell on deaf ears.
But did he get shut down?
God bless that officer.
Like, did someone intentionally shut that down?
Well, let's paint the picture,
right? Because he did a good job, but why didn't it move further from there?
All right, you were talking about Todd Proctor, I believe his name is.
Yeah.
Yes.
I always try to put myself in the environment that these characters are working in. So the same week that Stephen died, we were hearing rumors all over the county about a possible Murdaugh connection. So if the editor of the paper is hearing these rumors, and we don't know if there is a Murdaugh connection or not.
But where there's smoke, there's fire.
That's right. If the editor of the paper is hearing these rumors, then it's all over the county. And that made it difficult for him to do his job. Nobody wanted to talk to him. So that was the environment. That was the challenge he was up against. Whether somebody officially shut it down or whether it was just the fact that people were afraid to talk to him, that was the environment he was working in. But what's kind of ironic is whether or not there's a Murdaugh connection to this death or not, the Murdaugh connection is what's going to solve this case. The fact that that he's even loosely connected to Alex Murdaugh is putting new spotlight, new enthusiasm on this case. SLED got a black eye during the trial. Murdaugh's attorneys made him look inept and incompetent at times. And
because they were.
At times they could have done a better job, I think. And once again, they were operating in an environment where they show up and the son of a solicitor is there and they give him special treatment, perhaps because of who he is. You know, there's attorneys from the law firm walking all over the crime scene, and they don't treat it like they would treat a normal scene. So they made some mistakes, honestly. But now SLED wants to redeem themselves, and they're putting some real effort and real time and money into this case. And to bring you back to your last question, I'm hearing the same thing. I just talked to a couple of sources this week and just published a story. The grand jury, from what we're told, we can't confirm the grand jury, but from what my sources are telling me, including Eric Bland, that subpoenas and warrants are being issued. They've got people with knowledge and responsibility, is the quote he gave me, are they're looking to talk to these people. And Eric feels like before Labor Day, we're going to have some public announcements in this case. And to me, that sounds like arrest. It sounds like, they're bringing people in. Of course, Fitz News has named a couple of persons of interest, which I haven't put their names out there in my reporting because they haven't been charged. But Eric Bland, the attorney, feels like before Labor Day, we're going to have some real movement in this case. And another source, which very close to the investigation, has told me that it's not going to be what everybody wants to hear. We don't know for sure about this Murdaugh connection, but based on the forensic evidence, based on the people that are taking a second look at this case, they're all in agreement, from what I understand. The pathologist, I don't want to name any names, but they're all in agreement that Stephen died at the roadside. He was not killed somewhere else and dumped there. He died there. They're in agreement that it was a vehicular manslaughter and not a baseball bat like we first heard years ago. Now, the question is, who did it and what are the details? More than likely, it was an alcohol-related thing. Somebody hit the young man and panicked and left. Is there a connection to the Murdaughs? Is this a friend of the Murdaughs? Well, that's the interesting thing about a story. You have to kind of wait around to the ending, So we're all going to kind of find out together, I guess. But
Well, Michael, Eric Bland gave you more than he gave me. At the end of May, he spoke to Court TV, and he said that Mark Keel, who's the chief of SLED, told him back then that subpoenas are being issued as well as warrants, and that he thought a grand jury would be impaneled. Well, we know that's the case, but I reached out to Eric myself last night and tried to get an update. He said nothing other than progress is being made, and I believe that we're getting closer to an explanation being given by SLED. I believe that they have 4 to 5 people afraid of the world who they believe have information. So it looks like it's centering around 4 or 5 people potentially. And I was hearing the same thing as what Michael was just talking about, that this happened at the site of the accident. The body wasn't moved. He was killed at the site. So it's interesting to hear that.
it goes back to the investigation. Why weren't these people brought in question 8 years ago? If Buster Murdaugh's name is mentioned over 40 times in these case files, whether he's connected or not, why didn't somebody knock on his damn door and say, "Hey, bub, let's talk"?
I think they tried and got shut down by the law firm.
Well,
Michael, what would happen? Just, this is hypothetical. I'm not saying this is a case, but what if they arrested a Murdaugh in this, whether it be Buster or another Murdaugh? And again, this is a hypothetical. What would it do to Hampton County? What would it do to this whole story? Would it just ignite it again, light it on fire?
Well, it can't do. You can't do more damage to Hampton County than it's already been done. I mean, if Satan were to turn out to be the ringleader at the law firm, or if Satan were behind all this, you couldn't do any more damage to Hampton County. That's the thing. I was just having this conversation with in an interview with 48 Hours last week. That would make this story so much more spectacular. Now, we need answers and we need closure for Stephen Smith's family and the community. And if it turns out to be okay, these people did it, they have absolutely nothing to do with the Murdaughs, all that's well and good. The family has something they've been waiting on for 8 years, something they deserve. They deserve answers. They deserve closure. But if it turns out to be in any way related to the Murdaugh family, or God forbid, if it turns out to be true that a Murdaugh actually did it, I think this story would explode. Can you imagine?
I'm going to explode, Michael. I'm physically going to explode if the Murdaughs did it. I'm going to lose my shit and fall on the floor and explode. Well,
remember, Buster categorically denies any involvement in this, and I don't want to accuse anyone or throw anyone under the bus. Obviously, the investigation has to play out. A quick detour here, Michael. Does anyone think that Alec will eventually admit to killing Maggie and Paul, as he has admitted to some of his financial crimes? You know him or knew him. I guess you still know him. He didn't die. What's your gut tell you about that? Does he ever come clean one day?
I don't think he will, unless there's some profit or some legal or financial gain. I don't think he does. He broke, knowing the Murdaugh's history and knowing their family mentality. Murdaughs have been accused of stealing in the past, but the Murdaughs love family. They love that family name. Every generation, the father has raised the son at his knee and brought him up to be a lawyer or a solicitor. And in times of trouble, the Murdaughs circle the wagons and use their power and influence to make it all go away. Alex Murdaugh did the unthinkable. If your last name is Murdaugh, he killed one of their own. He killed 2 of their own. And that's something he'll never admit to. He does it, even though I'm sure his family has some strong feelings. He'll never, in my opinion, look his family in the eye and say, "Yeah, I did it." He would almost be, you're no longer a Murdaugh if you've done something like that, in my opinion.
Interesting. Joey B, Taylor B, for you. Where's the money? You'll not convince me that Alec Murdaugh did not hide his stolen money somewhere offshore, etc. Taylor, do you believe, as Amy is saying, yes, that is the case, that he has money stashed away?
The money.
Yeah. What do you
I'm
think,
twisted.
Taylor?
I'm twisted by this. I think there's probably some family trust out there that are not necessarily in his name. I think his father probably had a trust where I think there are other family members that are beneficiaries to those trusts. What over the years, that's how money's passed down in a system like they're in, and they have the knowledge and access to that. So I imagine there's some of that out there. But part of me also thinks that just the lifestyle that he was living burnt through a lot. He was flying private planes, I think, to some South Carolina baseball games. I mean, a private plane's an expensive trip, and I think a lot of money he was just throwing around. Imagine the lifestyle that Paul lived. Paul had access to everything.
The property taxes alone.
I know. I agree. I had a friend I was talking to the other day, and he was telling me what his kids were spending on their Amex and his Amex, and I said, "Are you kidding me?" Like I just, my jaw dropped. I was like, he's not that wealthy, but he's got substantial assets and income. And I can imagine that Paul had an Amex and he was out there, going to eat every night, or, stopping and living the lifestyle. And he just couldn't say no to his kids, and they just burnt through money. I don't think there's buried money. Okay. I don't believe there's buried money. I believe there's trust out there that will take care of Buster, and will take care of his brother. And I'm not going to necessarily say it's from Alex, but it's from generation to generation. But I think a lot of it got busted on that piece of property that they just lost, that was sold. So,
I was just thinking of something that Michael was saying, where he says he's got to put himself in sort of the environment where some of these investigators are. And Michael made me think, we're talking about money, hidden money. Someone here says I'm more suspicious of John Marvin versus Randy, which I was going to ask you about, but I don't want to. My question to you is, Hampton County is teeny tiny. Have you bumped into other Murdaughs? And I'm assuming you have since the verdict. What's it like for you in Hampton County, especially around that family?
Well, before the trial, I've never really had any problems. Now, after all this coverage and everything, and I'm on TV talking about their family, I haven't. Let me put it like this: at the beginning of the trial, John Marvin is walking around the courtroom. He's talking to everybody, shaking hands. Hey, how you doing? He's acting like he's there as a complete bystander. That he's not at all connected to this case, and he's friendly, and he's almost like a politician, just shaking everybody's hands. And as the trial progressed, that feeling kind of went away. The Murdaughs kind of kept to themselves, and you didn't see John Marvin walk around the courtroom shaking hands with anybody. So I have talked to him since then, and it wasn't a negative interaction, but they're not going out of their way being friendly to the media and everybody else right now. They're kind of staying in their own little world, and I can totally understand that.
I hope you're not getting your car towed every other week. But Sarah wants to know, does anyone know how Alec is doing in prison? Is he still in solitary? Michael, I think if anyone would know the answer, it'd be you. Have you heard anything?
I haven't heard anything other than the mail he's getting from from females, and getting a lot of fan mail. Getting Netflix is trying to get him to talk to him. A lot of women, reaching out to him in prison, which I think is kind of It's kind of a thing that happens, I guess, sometimes with famous criminals.
He's not still in solitary, is he?
He's in protective custody, and I think what that means is it pretty much most of the day he's by himself. He as time progresses, he'll have the same privileges that other inmates do, but he'll never be in general population. He might be in a setting where, and I don't know this for a fact, but he may be in a situation where he may be on a wing with a small number of inmates. But
I think he will flourish in prison as long as he's not solitary, right?
Well,
he
especially
would be
as a lawyer. Especially as a lawyer.
He'll be king of the castle. He'll be writing down appeals. He'll be like trading honey buns. He'll be giving legal advice. He'll be king of the castle. Trust me.
And it has been reported that he's got a tablet in his cell, which I can't believe. So he can actually FaceTime Buster, for example, if he wants to. I don't know how accurate that is, but that's
they all have tablets there.
Yeah,
it's my understanding. Crazy. It's my understanding he's at McCormick. Is my understanding. Right. I was up at prison visiting a client not too long ago, and it was at Broad River, which is R&E, and which is where
Taylor. It's a good thing you know how to wrestle, as they say in South Carolina, because those prisoners probably like you a little bit, Taylor.
Man, I tell you what, I'm not scared of those guys because I'm in there to help them. At the end of the day, I've been in a jail cell when a riot broke out, and they threw gas in the room, and my client stood at the door to make sure the fight that was going on, nobody got pushed into the room that we were sitting there talking in. I sat there and watched a guy get his hair grabbed and literally smashed against the wall at Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center when I was a public defender, and they pushed towards the door that I was sitting at, and the raid team came in, threw gas in the room, and my client stood there at the door to make sure nobody was coming in there. Most folks in there are good people, okay, at the end of the day, at their heart. They did a lot of bad things, okay, but it doesn't make them a bad human being, and they know that I don't live the lifestyle that they have grown up in. I would not be accustomed to that. And he stood there and said, and he could see on my face, I was a bit concerned. He said, I got the door. You know,
it must be nice to be a man.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. And
they weren't so good to me.
Well, I think Taylor makes a good point. Not everyone in prison is a horrible human being. They just made some horrible choices, I think. But Amy, this one's in your wheelhouse. From Shelley Raposa. How close to Operation Jackpot did the Murdaugh family get? I've heard whispers that smuggling, and that has always been an allegation. We heard that $50,000 a week figure. Do you think there's other stuff we don't know about that was going on at Moselle, and this whole notion that maybe there was some sort of smuggling ring going on? What say you, Amy?
I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility, because there's just too many coincidences, right? The way they own those little islands, all the stuff put together, it's not. And I do not believe, I am 100% sure that Alec Murdaugh was not a drug addict. I just don't believe it. I'm not saying he didn't pop pills every blue moon. It's like he was a fraternity boy drug addict. You know, when if somebody had one, he'd take it, but like he was not popping pills every day. That's bullshit. I have a friend who is a defense attorney in Columbia who called me and said, heads up, this is what I was told. I don't know if this is true, allegedly, and for educational purposes only. Do not sue me. I was told that they had a couple clients that had gotten caught with pills at school at USC. And they said, if you'll do a couple buys or tell us who you got them from, we'll dismiss the charges, which we see all the time, right, Taylor?
All the time.
It came to light that who they were buying these pills from was Paul. And so they couldn't write him out and had to take a different kind of deal, like a conditional discharge or whatever that might be, which makes sense to me. Like one of the things that we didn't hear about in the trial is when they searched Paul's house, his door was kicked open. His laptop was gone. Why do we not know that? And they didn't, from what I understand, they didn't search that house until 2 days after the murder. That should have been like probably because he didn't live there. I think he lived with Rogan, right? Am I right, Michael? Which makes sense why Alec would be calling Roro in the middle of a murder to get rid of the drugs, right? That would make sense. A logical hypothesis here, or whatever. And then they go to the house that he shares with Rogan and the door is open, like it's been kicked in and personal effects are gone from the house. Why do we not ask those questions? I keep going back to all the things that they didn't ask about in that trial. Why did they not ask those questions? Why did they not ask? We heard, I always joke around that the accountant with the gun got up there, was very fancy, and he's done all this forensic accounting, and nobody asked him, well, where did the money go? We heard him all about how he stole, but where did it go? Because money that comes into bank accounts has to go out of bank accounts. It just doesn't make sense to me. And then you put it together with a law firm that only finds money when he's stealing it from them. He stole it for decades, millions of dollars for decades from their clients, and they didn't find it. But the minute he took their money, they figured it out. And the lady who let that all happen under her nose is still the CFO. Let me tell you something. If somebody stole $10 million under my nose, they'd be fired within about 2 seconds. Do you know what I mean? In my office. So all these things don't make any damn sense. And the question is why?
Well, you're right. Why? The forensic accounting, I don't understand. I had a $3 million wire fraud case, and they could literally
every penny,
unfortunately, down to paying off like a note on a used vehicle. They were able to track the money to. It makes zero sense that they didn't track more money here and where it went.
I think they did, or they don't want to know because they're protected.
You're not wrong about the don't want to know.
You don't ask questions you don't want to know the answer to.
You don't want to know the answers to, and you don't necessarily want other people involved.
It reminds me of women when they know their husband's cheating, they ignore it, right? Because they don't really want to know the answer. They don't dig and find out because they don't really want to know the answer. And that's what I see when I see SLED. They didn't, and the feds are doing the same exact thing. If not, I think that it encompasses a lot of very fancy people, and that's why they don't ask.
Michael DeWitt, let me ask you a question. So Sarah Azari, criminal defense attorney from Los Angeles, she now has a podcast with Jim Griffin of Alec Murdaugh fame, present the podcast together. And she tweeted at me. I'm going to read the tweet to you. Some of this goes over my head here. She says, we hope you, in relation to Stephen Smith, we hope you highlight how the Smith story of a roadside vehicular manslaughter became a national story because of the rumors it had to do with the Murdaughs and Sandy's letter to the FBI regarding the same, only to know when their lawyer says the opposite, admitting his own statements were false. I'm assuming she's talking about Eric Bland there. What do you make of that tweet? She's basically saying it only became a story because of these accusations about the Murdaughs' involvement.
Well, I can't speak on Eric Bland's tweets. I don't know what he said. Every single statement. Eric likes to talk to the press, and that's good at times. If he's your lawyer, he's very vocal. So I can't necessarily, recall every single statement he's made, and that's his business. I'm not going to address that. But her point about it being connected to the Murdaughs, it's kind of a complicated thing. I mean, the rumor of the Murdaugh connection may have hurt the investigation in the beginning, whether it's true or not. But the rumor of Murdaugh connection is what's going to help. It's what's going to push officials to solve this case. So if officials solve this case, whether or not it's connected to the Murdaughs or not, I think that's a good outcome. I feel deeply sorry if Buster Murdaugh's name has been put out there for years falsely. I certainly feel for him. But I guess to answer, her question, I think the outcome right now is Buster's name can't get any more slandered. If he's not guilty. His name can't get any more slandered, and I'm certainly don't want to slander his name. But
Amy, hang tight.
Connection.
Yeah, Amy, hang tight for one sec, because a woman named Carla on Twitter responded to Sarah and said, and I want you to respond to this, Amy. I'm certain you've read the 2015 SLED report and have seen for yourself the name Murdaugh 40 plus times throughout that report. Sandy's 2016 letter was based largely on the same findings and leads. Whether any Murdaugh, anyone else mentioned in the SLED report, or anyone not yet mentioned was involved in Stephen Smith's death, we will soon know. But she's making the point the Murdaugh's name was mentioned 40 plus times, so it seems like there was a reason to assume that they might.
When I see that tweet, I want to say text, that tweet, are we supposed to be grateful for the Murdaughs? That's what it feels like. Like, well, Miss Smith wouldn't know what happened to her son, and there'd be no justice if his name wasn't involved. That's what it feels like. Am I losing my mind? Does anybody feel that? Like we should be grateful that the Murdaugh's name came up 40 times because we would just not know? I mean, I can
totally.
Young man.
Yeah.
And what it comes down to is, y'all, this is the reality of the world we live in. That poor gay kids don't get the same justice that the Murdaughs get or Amy Lovely gets, right? If something happened to me, we'd have it all over the paper. You know what I mean? I'm a white lady. I'm a lawyer. They're going to all come out of the woodwork. But like, this is the reality of the world we live in, that this is what happens to the least among us, to the people who are not the elites, to the non-Murdaughs, to the non-Lovelies. I mean, this is the reality we live in, and we're not going to be grateful because the Murdaugh name was mentioned 40 times. The reason why the Murdaugh's name was mentioned 40 times is because where there's smoke, there's fire, and there's something there. And I'm not saying that they're responsible for it, but I'm saying that they know something about it, and they're tied to it in some way. Whether they did it, they know about it, they've said something, but your name doesn't come up 40 times in a death investigation if there's not something that you didn't know nothing, right? That's a very Southern colloquial thing. You didn't know nothing. And that's just the reality of life.
And Michael, go ahead, Taylor. Go ahead.
So you mentioned you didn't know nothing, right? You didn't know nothing. Well, your family is the head solicitor.
How convenient.
How has information not reached at that level about the death of the solicitors was probably involved at some point in time. His father was at this. And what information did he take to his grave? We don't know that answer. Back to Michael saying it may not be what people want the answer to be, because people want the answer to be sexy. They want it to be a murder. That's what they want. That's what the news wants. That's what people that sell, that's what they want. And it might not be that. It might be something like obstruction. If you're talking 4 or 5 people know something didn't, that to me sounds conspiracy. That to me sounds something that information wasn't passed down. And I'm going back to what we talked about. But the family was the head prosecutor in that town. I live in a small town as well. Not as small as Hampton, but in Lexington, in the town of Lexington, I hear things. I'm just an attorney, but I hear things. To the fact that the head solicitor didn't hear things, like I hear things. Sure. I walk down my street. We had a fella down the road that I don't know what happened, but it's alleged that he committed suicide in his house last week. I was hearing rumors about this within hours in a text thread of, I'd never seen the guy before. I had seen his husband before, his partner before. I had never seen the guy before. I knew his partner walked his dog down the road on a regular basis, but I was getting messages. You can't tell me that there were not rumors being, that the family had not heard something with their father being the head solicitor in the town at the time. You can't tell me that he's not getting information from cops. There was a stupid sign that was put up over in West Columbia. So it's called Legs and Eggs. And it was the dumbest thing ever. But and it was apparently supposed to have gone to Orangeburg County. And I'm getting text messages about a picture of a place called Legs and Eggs. Now, you're going to tell me there's not a death, involving someone in this small town, that messages aren't being passed around about. I don't believe that for 1 second. People had information, and part of me thinks is like they didn't tell information. They obstructed and said lies about the information. And that's kind of where I feel the investigation's going there. But, again, I'm not intimately connected. Other people have better information. I just look at it from the outside as to that portion of it.
And I think we've got to switch over to Mallory Beach. I want to get that in too before we wind things up. But just a reminder that Sandy Smith, Stephen's mother, in her letter to the FBI said that Stephen had on more than one occasion mentioned to friends and his twin sister that he was involved romantically with someone from a prominent family in the county who was hiding his sexuality. He said it would shock people to know this person was gay. We suspect this could be the young man Stephen was referring to, though he never named him. Again, Michael, I don't want to get you in trouble here, but have you tried to dig down into that reporting? Have you? Is that something that you've pursued at all to try to find out who that could be?
I'm going to stay away from that question.
That's probably a good idea.
Yeah, that's I'll let somebody else field that question. But I do want to circle back just a second. The think about a small town dynamic. And think about how rumors spread. I think what we're going to find is there is some connection to the Murdaugh name, whether it be the person or persons who did it are friends of the Murdaughs, or whether it be, okay, maybe there was a Murdaugh in the vehicle, somebody else was driving. I think when the rumors started, and this is an educated guess on what I know about Hampton and small towns in this case, I think when the rumors started, it was something like, okay, a friend of Buster's did something. And as it spreads from one mouth to the next, that Murdaugh name gives it more power. So by the time it gets around town, it's not a friend of Buster, or it's not a friend of the Murdaughs, it's the Murdaughs. So that could explain the whole the whole
worst name of telephone ever.
Yeah. You've seen the experiment where you whisper in somebody's ear, and by the time it goes around the room, it's completely changed. So, and I think people are seeing conspiracies behind every tree. And I don't think that it's going to be what they want it to be. As far as the sexuality, I've tried not to. I want to avoid some lawsuits, so I've tried to stay away from that. But it's certainly reasonable in a small town.
Yeah.
Well, I just think it's interesting, with these accusations flying around about the Murdaugh and what's that?
I hope and I pray that Buster Murdaugh had nothing to do with this, because unpopular opinion, I feel sorry for Buster Murdaugh. The mother in me, the idea that he would lose his entire family and then his father, and knowing that that's got to be the hardest thing to live with in the entire world. And it absolutely breaks my heart when I see all these people, when it's just rumor and innuendo, until there's like any hard facts to be like, it's Buster, it's Buster, it's Buster. You know what I mean? And I mean, he's been through so much. Can we just give him the benefit of the doubt until there's something there not to? You know what I mean?
I think until the evidence points directly at him, that's what you've got to do. Sally says, when are we going to discuss Mallory Beach? Right now? For those who don't know, she died February 24th, 2019 in a boating accident. She was thrown from the boat, piloted by captained, I guess, by what was suspected to be a heavily, and when you see him on video, you can understand why, heavily intoxicated then 19-year-old Paul Murdaugh. They hit a bridge piling around 2 a.m. She was missing for 7 days. The body was eventually found. Worst fears were confirmed. the mother of Mallory Beach and other families filed a suit in March of 2019. Taylor Bell, this was in the 16th Judicial Circuit. Judge Daniel D. Hall. I don't know if you're familiar with this person, but it appears that they're finally going to go to trial. How does this all play out in your opinion? I know we actually tried to get Mark Tinsley, the family attorney, to come on. He wanted to, but said he's going to have to defer till after the trial. But what's going on right now ahead of all this, Taylor?
Well, I actually pulled up the public index to look at some of the filings, and it looks like there was actually a filing to disqualify Mark Tinsley filed recently.
They said he was a witness in his own case, right?
Yeah. There was like a filing and I think it got filed yesterday to disqualify him as representing the family in that matter.
But based on what? Based on what?
Pause. You know how boss you have to be and how scary you have to be that they're trying to take you out personally like that. That is awesome.
I once had a solicitor try to move me off of a case. It was pretty funny.
Me too.
The judge laughed. It was great. But, where do I see this going? I think that Mark wants justice, and justice is having the full case shown. I really believe that's what the family wants here. I think Mallory's family is not necessarily caring about the money. I think they care about seeing it through and through, and that justice is done for their daughter. Okay.
I think everybody else after Mallory from Parker's, because this is their MO. They serve kids with fake IDs.
They do. I'm not saying they do, but
well, it's interesting you brought that up because Parker's came out they're looking for a summary judgment and dismissal of the case, saying, look, Paul Murdaugh, but they said that he used a real ID, which was his brother's ID. But I mean,
that got denied. But I look at it. I go back to my days when I was Paul's age, and I lived on the coast up there, just north of where Amy lives. I lived up in Ocean Isle Beach. We used to ride from Ocean Isle down the Intercoastal Waterway to Barefoot Landing. Okay, and we used to make some dumb decisions. Now, what was anyone on that boat with me when we used to go down there and underage drink and ride the boat? And did we act the manner in which Paul acted? You've kind of seen the testimony from some of the Netflix documentaries. That's just outrageous. That is absolutely outrageous, the way that is portrayed, if that is true. And I think that's what wants to be shown, but to the public that she was destroyed by this kid that was privileged and had access to all of this stuff, all this money, and had no rules, never had to abide by any rules. And he could go into the gas station and get whatever he wanted because the entire community enabled his conduct and the way he acted. And Parker's, I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't go in with a fake ID and purchase alcohol at a young age. 100%. I know most of us, that went to college had access to fake IDs, but there bears some responsibility when somebody's life is taken by someone that's entrusted to sell these products that can cause impairment, and someone's got to be held responsible. And I think that's what Mark's doing here, and it's going to play out. And I think it's going to come out in his favor at the end of the day. And Parker's got deep, deep pockets. I think I read something where they are going to have somewhere about $1 billion in sales this upcoming year. That is, that's a lot of damn money.
I disagree. I don't think this is really about. I think Mark wants to show what really happened, but I think that this And we know it's not about, there is not a dollar. People always like, blah, blah, blah. There's not a dollar amount that would make any of this okay with losing your child in such a horrific way, right? I don't even think this is about Paul. This is about Parker's. And this is about protecting every kid after Mallory, right? With Parker's. So the real value of this case, at least the way I see it, is the failure of the system of Parker's, right? That they had a history of not really carding, letting underage kids buy beer, that kind of thing, and not really caring about it and just continuing on with what they were doing. And so I think also the real value of this case is what that jury is going to hear is that all the really fucked up, shitty stuff that Parker's did to try to take down the Murdaughs, the Beach family, and all the kids on that boat. And that is where the value of that case is, because what they did and what they have done and continue to do is unfucking conscious.
It's unfucking believable that they're arguing that it's her fault that she got into the fucking boat because she should have known that he was drunk and that it was an assumed risk. That is the most insane argument. Insane argument I've ever heard. Like, if you told me that and that was my child, we would not be in court, sir. We would be having a conversation on the front lawn if you sat there and said that my daughter was responsible for her own death because she got into the fucking boat with somebody that happened to be drinking and he was angry and ran into a pole and wouldn't stop after you would.
And then you go and hire private investigators.
I was going to say to South Carolina, but then North Carolina has come out in full force now.
No, my neck is getting all red. Okay.
Amy, by the way,
fired up about
Amy,
that.
while I have you.
The value of this case, because Parker's hired private investigators try to prove that Buster's gay or try to prove that these kids were horrible or that Paul is like this, whatever. And instead of just taking responsibility, it's because this is a deal. We can all wrap our mind around making a mistake and selling a kid beer, right? And you look the family in the eye and you say, I'm so sorry. Because this is how you defend that case as Parker's is, never again will this ever happen. We are putting these safeguards in place. That way it will never happen. Because we can all wrap our mind around a mistake. But we take accountability for it. We look people in the eye and we apologize and we put systems in place where it'll never happen again. But Parker's didn't do that. Parker's doubled down. Parker's blamed the victims. They blamed the sweet little Mallory Beach and her sweet little parents. And like, it just makes me cry thinking about it. Like the hell that they have put that family through that was totally needless. And if they had just looked at that family and said, I'm so incredibly sorry. Never again. We're doing this to fix it, to make sure there's never another Mallory Beach. That family would have felt okay about it and probably sold for a very, way lower value of the case than it probably is worth. But they didn't. And instead, they did the wrong. I'm a big fan of when you do the right thing, the rest follows in life. I mean, I live by that. I teach my kids by that. I run my office like that. And when I see Parker's, they're the exact opposite of that. I will not go to a Parker's. They have the nicest, cleanest bathrooms in South Carolina, for the record. I refuse. I refuse to go in that place. I refuse to give them a nickel of my money because of the horrific things that they have done to the Beach family. And they can suck it.
Amy, I love the way you get passionate. We're going to wrap up in a minute because I feel
upset. I'm going to cry.
Someone was knocking on Michael DeWitt's door 20 minutes ago, so I got to let this guy go in a second. But this has come up a bunch in the chat, Amy. I would not ask Michael this question because I don't want to get him in more trouble than he's already in Hampton County. But do you believe that Alex confessed to Randy or any of the Murdaughs and helped he helped him get rid of the guns? Do you think he told anyone in the family what really happened? Do you think anyone knows the truth right now?
Not Randy. Not Randy. Could it sound any more Southern than that? Not Randy. No, I just don't. If he did, I don't think it was Randy. I think if he was going to tell anybody, he'd have told John Marvin.
I don't think with this crime, if he had help, I think it was some of his connections. There's a couple of police officers that names have been thrown out there. But he would not tell a Murdaugh that he just killed another Murdaugh.
Don't you think it's weird though, Michael? Have you listened to the jailhouse calls?
Mm-hmm.
They talk in code. They're talking in code. Hey, Buster, you want to go down there and and hunt? You can go hunt. You know, you can bird. And then it's like it goes back and forth between, and it's like different seasons. You know, you're from the South when you understand when somebody's talking about hunting deer and hunting birds and hunting whatever at the same time. You know that ain't right? Like they're different seasons. So when you're saying, it just feels very contrived, and it feels like they're talking in code. And he does that with John Marvin.
Once again, knowing what I know about the family and that family dynamic and that family history, they might talk in code and conspire about other things, but I don't think he's conspiring with his brothers to kill.
Oh, no.
If it was just Maggie, then he could go to one of his brothers and say, "Hey, I did it. Can you cover up the crime?"
Kid, yeah, maybe.
We're talking about Paul. They loved Paul more than they loved Alex.
Oh, I think, if we didn't get anything from testimony,
he's not going to ask John Marvin to hide a weapon that he shot Paul with. John Marvin loved that boy. So, I think that answers that question. Now, stolen money, something, I'm not going to put anything past anybody, but as far as once he, and a wife, that's kind of different. But once he pulled the trigger on Paul, he was no longer a Murdaugh. He was a on his own. He was, like the judge said, the monster you became. And he's not asking a Murdaugh for help.
I think that was the part that I was team not guilty for the longest time. Like Amy Z and everybody would laugh at me in our lawyer text messages because I just didn't want to believe that someone would kill their kid like that. You know what I mean? At all, much less like that. You know what I mean? That was the hard part to wrap my mind around.
Look at the testimony. He told several people, with Paul gone, now he can clear his name and beat the boat case.
The testimony, his testimony, coupled with the GPS. Yeah. I hope he dies a very slow death and somebody shanks him and he bleeds out.
Yeah.
Michael, by the way, Murdaugh Alec is supposed to be deposed in this wrongful death lawsuit. Any word on when that might happen? Have you heard anything?
I haven't heard anything, but I do want to circle back to Mallory Beach. I'm glad you asked. And I'm going to avoid the spicy sentence enhancers that my friends use. I do. Those are some of my favorite words. But since I'm representing my media company, I'm going to refrain from that.
Good call.
But my wife uses one or two of those words every now and then. I think you heavily debated Parker's. They think some of the things they've done. We'll let the judge and the jury decide what's what at the end of the day. But this goes to Hampton County. This goes to trial in Hampton County on August 14th, unless there's some change. And my prediction is a Hampton County jury, they're going to be very sympathetic to the family of Mallory Beach. And just like state police are maybe looking to redeem themselves or after this whole story, I think Hampton County wants some redemption. I think Hampton County is going to, the 12 people, you can't predict what 12 people are going to say or do, but I think as a whole, this jury is going to say, hey, this maybe is our way of making things right. We're going to give a good verdict. We're not going to concern ourselves with every detail of the law. Maybe Parker's might have a legal argument here or there. Who knows? Good. But if we help bring justice to Mallory Beach's death, maybe in some way this will absolve us as a community. And this is our way of kind of making things right. That's my prediction. Hampton County, the jury is going to want to do the right thing. And I hope that's what happens.
Devon Short, thank you for the super sticker. She is echoing everyone's sentiments. Great panel. Followed by this. I blame this squarely on one person. Joel, could you guys not yell? That would have to be passionate Amy Lawrence Lovely. But look, what can you do? What can you do? A bunch of people, Michael, were asking if you know if Buster and Alec are still speaking or still in touch with each other. It's been a wild show, so I forgot if I already asked you that. I apologize if I did. But as far as you know, are they still in contact?
I haven't pursued that, so I don't know.
Excellent.
I'm going to go with I have no facts to back this up, but I'm going to go with a yes.
There you go. I like going out on a limb. Taylor Bell went out on a limb for me today coming on the show. He is a former prosecutor, now a criminal defense attorney. He started back at his days at the University of South Carolina School of Law, and guy knows all about jury persuasion. He got training on that. Taylor, will we get justice for Stephen Smith, and will Mallory Beach's family, I guess, make get justice in their own way in this wrongful death suit?
I'm about to die over here on whatever. Your
last word.
On here. Yeah, I think we'll get justice for Stephen Smith. I do. I want to believe that, at least. I believe he deserves justice. I think Mallory Beach's family deserves justice. I think they will get justice. I think what Parker did, I think what Paul did, I think what his family did by knowing that their son was out there and trusting him with that vehicle, knowing that they're out there drinking and being irresponsible, having all the prior incidences that he had, that that there will be justice, and that Mallory Beach did not die in vain. That there will maybe be protections put in place of higher standards on making sure that those responsible for selling alcoholic beverages or any kind of substance that's intoxicating have better safeguards. I think that will come out down the road. I think it's something that has to. I think alcohol is more dangerous than the marijuana out there. I think it causes more harm to folks than any marijuana that can be smoked, in terms of the anger that it brings out in people. And I think that there will be justice at the end by Mark Tinsley, by showing how she didn't die in vain and hold the parties responsible that were negligent in the matter. Yeah, I do. I firmly believe that. I think that the Hampton County jury will do the right thing. I don't think that Parker's will get by scot-free. I don't think it's going to be a quick decision, because there's going to be an appeal process. There absolutely will appeal it, and it'll make its way through, because they're going to fight tooth and nail everything, because they don't want to be held responsible in the future, because this can lay bad precedent for folks in the future that own similar businesses. If they're held responsible, all other businesses are now going to be held responsible, and there's going to be a flood of lawsuits over very similar conduct. That's the argument that's made on the other side all the time, and that's what they're going to try to portray. But at the end of the day, I think justice will prevail. Just when the trial's over doesn't mean it's going to be done and over with, because they're definitely going to file an appeal, because I think you're going to see a very, very substantial verdict. Very, very substantial verdict. I think our friend down, I think there was a verdict up there in Murdaugh Beach recently at a water park that was absolutely, if you knew the ins and outs of what happened there, it shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have happened. And I think you're going to see the same thing here.
Amy Lawrence, she fights for the civil rights. You got to get that those allergies or whatever that is checked out, Taylor. We need you around. But Amy Lawrence,
I want to know when the Watermelon Festival is. I meant to ask Michael that.
Michael, where's the Watermelon Festival, Michael?
It is next week, and Taylor, I feel your pain. I had pollen allergies throughout the whole Murdaugh murder trial. If you heard coughing in the background of the whole trial, that was me.
Yeah.
Do we have ripe watermelons yet?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Taylor, you better get over there. Meanwhile, Amy Lawrence, she fights for the civil rights of the wrongfully accused every day in her practice at the lovely law firm. Cheryl Chamberlain, I was surprised about all of the F-bombs. I've never heard that language on this channel before. Whenever you see the blonde-haired woman over here from South Carolina, you can expect that. We've got to get DeWitt on this show when he's not representing his company, so we can hear him go at it as well. But Amy Lawrence, same questions to you. Will Stephen Smith get justice? Will Mallory Beach's family get that big settlement and some justice in their own right?
I think Taylor said it best. It's like, don't we hope? Like, we work in this system, right, where we represent the marginalized, the little guy. And I don't represent anybody, any rich people. I've never represented rich people, right? I represent people who've been hurt by the system usually. And that's the whole reason we do what we do. So those people have some sort of justice, whatever that looks like, whether it's, for justice for some people is, and it might be for the Beach family, that their story is told. Right. And it might be because and that there's no other kid that this ever happens to, because they're going to do better. And it's going to send a message and a ripple through everybody who serves alcohol. Justice, that might be justice for them, whatever that looks like. But we're all working towards this goal of some kind of justice. And the idea that they wouldn't get it is more than my little heart can handle. Because we've got the Smith family who, God bless that mother, who is like a mom warrior, who would not take no for an answer, who asked, who's writing the governor. Like, it breaks my heart. Who's writing the governor asking for help, right? Help me. My kid died. No one wants to figure it out. She kept up, wrote all the letters, did all the things, talked to all the media, doing all the things that she's supposed to do. The Beach family doing all the things they're supposed to do. So the idea of them not getting justice is more than my heart can handle. So I think they're definitely going to get justice. I pray that Miss Smith finds out what happened to her little boy, because he may have been 20, whatever, but that was her baby, and she deserves that. And that whole family deserves that. And the Beach family deserves that. So I surely hope so, because I don't want to live in a world where they don't.
Well said, Amy. Last but not least, of course, Hampton County native Michael M. DeWitt. He is a multiple award-winning journalist, longtime editor of the 143-year-old The Hampton County Guardian. He's also author of the brand new book, Wicked Hampton County. Get on the Amazon and buy that immediately. Michael, your final thoughts before we say goodbye. It'd be great if you just dropped 20 F-bombs in a row, by the way. But anyway, your final thoughts.
I want to so bad. I really do. That's a very versatile word.
It'd be so pretty too, the way he says it.
Yeah, we should have a show sometimes and talk about Southern expressions. But anyway, I've never agreed with a panel as strongly as I do now. I love the passion. I really like the passion. Here's my thoughts in a nutshell. I think that a Hampton County jury is going to give justice to the Beach family. I think it will send a message. I think the Parker's attorneys will fight tooth and nail and appeal it. But ultimately, I think justice will be served. With Stephen Smith, I think they're going to find answers and justice. And it may not be the answers that everybody's looking for, but I think they're going to find them. And they're going to find them before the end of the summer. But the big picture, I think we're already starting to see it. You've already touched on it. Regardless of what a jury of 12 people decides, regardless of whether or not Stephen Smith, which I hope there's an arrest, I hope there's a conviction. But if I'm wrong, I think we're already starting to see the most important thing happen. I think these are two very important lessons here. The dangers of alcohol, and companies that sell alcohol should be more responsible. People that consume alcohol should be more responsible. So I think there's so many lessons we can learn from the boat crash case that and reforms. I hope that with the outcome of this, companies like Parker's will take a strong look at how they sell alcohol and to who. And with Stephen, a gay kid in a small town, I think this is already, I've talked to friends of his, and they've already talked about how this has inspired them and emboldened them to come out and to be who they are. Stephen was an individual. I wish I could have met him, but he was not afraid or ashamed to be who he was, to be openly gay in a small conservative town. And I think that is very powerful stuff. And I think that once we have some answers and justice, I think you're going to see some changes in a small town like Hampton. Young people are going to not be afraid to be who they are, and maybe we'll see a change in the justice system where maybe a Stephen Smith can get the same brand of justice as a Buster Murdaugh. We can only hope.
Joe Schneider said it. DeWitt is a true journalist. You heard it here first. Those are his predictions for how this all plays out. Amy Lawrence Lovely, can you address this real quick? And I'll be back in one split second.
Yeah, it's definitely bless your heart. I also I love that for you. we always say, I remember my grandmother saying that, and I'm like, if that came out of my grandmother's mouth, we all went, sat at,
I like Michael's idea. We need to do a whole show on Southern expressions. That, by the way, that me getting
in like a hair and a biscuit.
I don't even know what that means, but I just had to let Ethel out. That's my boxer. I can't wait to move into my studio where I can be in peace. We're moving into a real studio. I'm upgrading myself and can't wait for the day. In the meanwhile, I'm reading chat messages, hosting a podcast, and letting Ethel, the boxer with the world's longest tongue, out to do her business. Quick programming note. What a professional show this is. 12:30 p.m., a live lunch show tomorrow. And we have the spokesperson for Corey Richins. If you don't know who that is, she is the Salt Lake City, Utah mom, suburbs of Salt Lake City, accused of poisoning to death her husband, Eric Richins. She was denied bail earlier in the week, and she started sobbing in court. And we're going to talk to the family spokesperson, Greg Skordas, of Eric Richins' family. We also have a psychologist on the show to see exactly what is going on there. If you're having some spousal disagreements, don't poison them. Just
don't do it, girl. Don't do it.
Get a divorce. Until then, love you, America. Thank you to our beautiful panel. Thank you to the Palmetto State and the Battle of North and South Carolina accents, along with the Jersey accent. And love you, Australia, the UK, Canada, Israel, all these countries represented. And Kenya was on the other day. Until tomorrow. Panel, hang on one second.